what did you have to?
I just wondered if there was a time in which we would transition to questions, if you had a time mark in mind.
Around 7:15.
That sounds good. Well, so we are waiting here. Don't see anybody else piling in yet, but let's assume that they are going to. While we're waiting, I have these books I'd like to show you. Actually, let me start by saying that our next zero waste webinar is March 3rd, and it's going to be a conversation with the author of the book, Say Goodbye to Plastics. This is Sandra Ann Harris. This will be really interesting. So that's March 3rd. Since we are partnering in the zero waste webinar series with the library, I've got a bunch of books here from the library, including this one, which John highly recommended, Organic Gardening. This is a great one. This is a book that an author that we're going to feature in one of our upcoming webinars also at the library. This is a great one that my family has really enjoyed reading through, also available at the library. Here we have Growing Good Food, very much apropos for today's topic too, available at the library. And more Organic Gardening, this one for beginners. And frankly, John and Zuleyja back me up on this. We're always beginning, right? When it comes to gardening. Anyways, those are some of the, these are some of the great collection of sort of zero waste related topical books that are available at the library, many more as well. Maybe we should kind of transition into the actual presentation at this point. I mean, with the introduction of the presentation. So I'm going to turn this over to Christy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Helmkamp. I'm the Development Community Engagement Manager at the Goshen Public Library. And we were thrilled when the Department of Environmental Resilience asked us to join with their Zero Waste Goshen initiative. And tonight we are incredibly excited to present to you Growing Food at Home But Not Alone with members of Bushelcraft Farm, Zuleyja and John. First, what we're going to do is I'm going to throw it back to Aaron, and he's going to do just a little introduction to the Zero Waste Goshen initiative, and then we'll have another little introduction with Zuleyja and John.
So I'm Aaron Swatsky-Kingsley. I'm the director of the City of Goshen Department of Environmental Resilience. My colleague Teresa Saylor and I, along with Goshen Public Library, have launched this webinar series, Zero Waste webinar series, to help members of our community here in Goshen and beyond think about how to reduce waste in our personal lives, in our home lives, but also, into our work lives as well. Anywhere where we have an opportunity to reduce the amount of consumption and therefore waste, that kind of crowds into our lives. We're looking for those opportunities. We're looking for people in our community and from beyond, writers, thinkers, authors, who are working in one way or another at this issue of how to reduce consumption and waste, how to be more sustainable in our lives, how to be more thoughtful, more careful. So we are also very grateful for the partnership with the Goshen Public Library. Let me just quickly mention that in conjunction with this particular webinar tonight, we will be making seeds available to members of the public for their own gardening purposes. You can pick those up next week. at the Wreath Interpretive Center between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. The Wreath Interpretive Center is at 410 West Plymouth Avenue in Goshen. So free seeds, stop by, pick them up, start your own gardening. Christy, back to you.
All right, thank you, Erin. All right, and as we said, tonight is Growing Food at Home, but Not Alone. And we have Zuleyja from Bushelcraft Farms, and she is leading this fantastic project called Rooted Through Corn, Planting Families. And she will be discussing this project more, especially in terms of supporting backyard gardeners and raising, honoring, and sharing heritage corn seed, as well as the tools, supplies, and knowledge needed for this. And then John will join us at the end to share more about starting small with your gardening, whether it's on your patio or on your backyard. And John and Zuleyja, we are so excited to have you start your presentation for us. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be jotting them down and then asking John and Zuleyja at the end of this. So go ahead.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Erin, for inviting John and myself to speak today. We are humbled and very happy to get our hands dirty and talk backyard today with everybody. So I am going to start sharing my screen here so that we can get started with our presentation. So our presentation is called Growing Food at Home, but Not Alone. It seems like sometimes gardening can be overwhelming, especially if we're newbies, if we don't know what we're doing, if we've never grown, if we've always bought at a store. Things may look pretty difficult, but it's not so hard if you're not alone. It's not so hard if you make a community out of it. And that is what Rooting Through Corn Planting Families, a local project organized by myself and by some other participants like John Zirkle and other people that are involved is all about. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, okay? So this comes from the website, the description of the class. If you came to this class, it's because you are interested in maybe growing a garden, but also wanting to reduce the amount of waste in the process. And you also may be interested in how to share these resources and how to make the most out of your gardening experience. So let me tell you a little bit about Rooting Through Corn Planting Families. This project really has a lot of names and some of them are very long names, but I do want to mention them because they have to do with the project's history and background. So back in 2018, this project was informally called the Michiana Heritage Corn Project, and it was basically 4 or 5 corn growers whom all got seed from John Shirk. He is a seeds person who takes care of seeds and who also has a generous heart for sharing them. So we got, about 5 of us got some precious seeds from him, all heritage corn from all parts of continental America. But everybody was in their own garden. And we were all facing struggles and challenges and knowing about these seeds or learning about these seeds, but everybody was in their own place. So we got together a couple years later and shared those struggles and those concerns. And we decided to pull up a proposal for a SARE grant. SARE is a Sustainable Agricultural Research Education grant. So that just fit right in. And what we were talking about was, well, we all have this precious seed and we know there's a lot to learn from it. How can we make this a family effort? How can we educate from our backyards? How can we bring those seeds back into the homesteads and keep them safe from GMOs? That was basically what our proposal was about. We were awarded this grant and we decided it needed a kind of a better name for the community. So we talked about Rooting Through Corn Planting Families, Maíz y Raíz, Sembrando en Familia. This is a bilingual project. This community is very diverse, and there's English and there's Spanish and there's other languages spoken, but at least we're going to work with the languages that we know. So when we talk about rooting through corn, that word rooting is not just about planting, but about community building in this process. So how do we do this? Well, we need to share resources. Basically the resources that we got through the grant, we wanted to really share those through the project and for the people to be able to um, use these resources accordingly, right? We saw a need for more knowledge about corn for human consumption and as well as corn culture. It is astounding how many people think that heritage corn is just to hang up, on your yard during the fall. And how many people have no idea that this corn is extremely nutritious and tasty and savory and good for you compared to sweet corn, which has been genetically modified, to be very, very sweet. So another thing that we tackled in this project was the environmental and geographic challenges to growing this corn. Like I said, we are surrounded by GMO corn, and how can we keep these seeds that have all these heritage, knowledge, and sacredness? How can we keep them that way? Another environmental challenge would be climate change. We faced a lot of things. I will talk about this later on, about climate change affecting our crops and also adapting late maturing corn to short seasons. Some of the corn that we worked with comes from different areas of continental America. So we had this challenge also of, maybe bringing a tropical corn to this area that has maybe a longer season to work with where it is from. So how do we respond to these challenges? One of the first things that we thought of is sharing the seeds. We believe that it should be the families that should steward and be the seed keepers, seed savers, and seed sharers. So first we wanted to get some seeds into some families' hands. We have around 20 families participating in the project. We have one-person families, we have couples, we have families with children, we have families that are entire classes or teams or organizations. So we think that this project is impacting around 100 people. So first off, we started sharing seeds and trying to have a conversation with each of these people, saying this is very sacred seed. We need to take care of it. We need to learn how to plant it and how to take care of it. And we are going to hold trainings and sessions and workshops so that we can all learn from each other and how to best be stewards of the seeds. How else can we face these challenges? Well, sharing tools is an awesome practice. We can't all go and get a sod cutter, for instance. We can't all go and buy things, as a way of being sustainable and reducing is, okay, well, so-and-so has this tool, so-and-so has this other tool. How can we share this, that we're not all buying things and we're not all having 3 things of each, which tends to happen very much in this society. So what we did with some of the grant money is said, well, there's some soil testing to be done. We can do this by taking soil samples and sending them to the lab. So we did that from a couple of our family sites. We had some very new beginning gardeners who had never planted seeds, who had never started a garden. So they needed to rip out some grass, to get their plot started. We rented a sod cutter and, we rented it for a day and it was available for all the other participants who wanted to use it. And likewise with a chainsaw, we had the opportunity to see some homemade tools also. In the center picture, we see Steve Shantz with one of his tools that he invented to kind of get rid of weeds. We also purchased a hand grinder to grind corn with. We have a freezer that everybody in the project can use to best keep our seeds during the season before we plant them. And we also were able to get a hold of a metate, which is a volcanic stone grinding slab, and a clay kamal for the group. I wanted to make an emphasis that we held or have held training sessions. We've made videos, and we've made these videos, in bilingual format because we think it is very important to get information out there for people that speak only Spanish and maybe don't have as much access as.
Hello, this morning we are going to
could.
test.
I'm not going to show all of this video. I just wanted to show you
for
kind of the
various soil
informal way that
nutrients
we're sharing
before we get ready to plant.
our
Hola, ¿qué tal? El día de hoy
gifts,
vamos a hacer una
the tool.
de la tierra de este jardín para saber qué nutrientes.
We also shared out that probe
And
for
get
taking
started.
soil tests. So that was available for the group. Sharing supplies. We got a huge pile of compost that is, we still have some compost at Bushelcraft farm available for the group. And we got this from the city of Goshen. It is very, very good, reliable organic compost. We got some organic fertilizer. Corn is a huge nitrogen eater, so we got some organic fertilizer, some lime to amend the soil for some of our participants based on our soil tests, as well as other materials for hand pollination. These mesh bags at the center bottom that you see the picture of, those are awesome to keep our corn safe from critters and ants, birds. Also a huge bird netting that we got for the larger plots. BT, which is a biological cornworm pesticide. We got, 1 plastic bottle of BT that gets diluted and shared out in between 20 families. So that was very cool, instead of everybody going and getting their own BT and, wasting more than half of it because they don't use it in their plot. Sharing supplies, I put here arm work and leg work because we did work shoulder to shoulder in several plots, helping each other out, helping each other during planting season, helping each other in several other tasks and projects. And also when it came to harvesting, there were many arms and many legs that worked together. Ideas, the picture at the right, we see a bit of smut growing on near the top of that corn. So this picture was sent from one of the participants. She sent it in a text message saying, "What is this? It's growing on my corn. I have never seen it. I'm afraid it's gonna, infest my whole garden." So that's when we shared also some knowledge and some things. And I said, "Hey, that's huitlacoche. We eat that in Mexico." So, but yeah, we were able to give her some tips on how to remove corn smut safely before it turns black and it opens its spores and sends its spores to the ground. And that's when smut becomes a problem. If you catch it at this stage, that's not a problem. Sharing supplies, we carpooled places, and we also shared some books and other resources. So through all this sharing of tools and supplies, connections were made, and we were able to also share knowledge. How did we do this, or how have we done this? Well, like I said, holding several training sessions, which we did via Zoom, also in a bilingual format. So that was more of the academic type of trainings. But we also held in-person workshops in which whoever could arrive from the participants would get together, share ideas, share concerns with each other, and kind of helped each other solve problems that we were having on our plots. Bottom center is one of our participation at the First Fridays Harvest Fest. We were able to share information and some of our preliminary project results. We had a kids table sharing also some folklore and some crafts that you could do with corn. So when we're sharing knowledge, we're also wanting to share this with the community. I think that is very, very important for the community to know, that there are people working with heritage corn, that it's possible, and that it's also very sustainable. Okay, bottom right picture. This is sharing some sacred moments together, some knowledge of our ancestral teachings. So what we see here is one of the first offerings that we laid as a group. This offering was blessing of the seed. If you look closely, there's a lot of seeds on the ground there. And well, we held a brief ceremony just to let the sun hit these seeds, activate them, and get our intentions set for the season. and to kind of just set a moment aside for the sacredness of planting together, for activating all of the creativity and all of the teachings that come with each corn seed. So as John and I were thinking about talking in this presentation, we were thinking of stories in which during our project, we reduced wasted time, we reduced wasted energy, and we reduced our materials. And I really like to talk about this activity that we had at the Harvest Fest last fall, which was making corn husk dolls. One of our project participants, Faith Hunsberger, she came up with this idea, and like we see in the right picture, she shared a book with us that we could learn from, and we decided to tell the story, tell this Native American story of the corn husk dolls as we were teaching children and adults how to make these beautiful crafts. So they got to listen to the story without any appropriation, because we kind of took it word from several tribes of North America. While people got to get their creativity going, got to use a corn husk, which if you don't make tamales, you probably just throw away your corn husks. So that's one of the ways that we could reduce waste and share knowledge at the same time. Another thing that we did with the project was a family-friendly field session. This was at one of our participants' farms. His name is Stephen Shantz. Some of you may know him. He's a very, very creative person. And we wanted to make this family-friendly because it is so important for us and for sustainability to pass something on to the kids and the grandkids. So we invited at this moment the farmers with their families. Some came with children, some came with pets. And it was just a wonderful time. We got to see Hopi pink and Hopi blue corn, as well as some Darwin John corn, and learn from seeing it on the stalks and their maturation and things like that. We also shared some note taking, which was very, very interesting, how some people just out of their own will took some notes and then shared them with the group. And we got a lot of knowledge from that conversation. Just as some advice, a picture on the left here is some hand-churned vanilla ice cream. It was so good and kids loved it. So just as a commentary, if you ever want to invite children to any type of session or situation that may bore them, please have something for them. A ball, some ice cream, some tomato tasting like we had at Steve Shantz that day. Share and share generously with the family, taking into consideration kids are kids and they don't sit through things that long. Another event that I feel was very, very meaningful and where connections were created was the work at Bushelcraft Farm. So Rooting Through Corn had one of its research plots at Bushelcraft Farm. It was one of the larger plots. And we decided, well, as part of the project, we hand pollinated part of that plot to later test and see if hand pollination affected cross contamination with pollens from other areas and other GMO corns. So this is a very time-consuming task. Again, we shared information, we shared bibliography, we shared talks, we shared resources, because at that moment, these supplies for hand pollination were just back ordered. We just couldn't find them online or anywhere. So one of our project participants, John Shirk, he dug in his basement and he said, I have some things from a couple of years ago when I tried out hand pollination, and he handed those over. We were able to complete the process, and awesome news. After the genetic testing, we got back our results, and we are happy to share that all of our seeds, whether hand pollinated or open pollinated, were GMO free. So that is wonderful news. It means we started out with clean seed. It means that empirically we took care of it for a couple of years and kept it clean, and that this year, with more knowledge and with more resources and with more experience, we were able to also maintain the seed free from GMO contaminants. It's very, very important in a group project that you celebrate, especially when we talk about planting and when we talk about corn culture. There is a lot of celebration that goes on. So I would just like to show this quick video of one of our field times together. Let me see here. So this was at our harvest celebration. It was held at one of the research plots. We laid down an offering with some of the harvest that we had picked up earlier in the seasons. Everybody participated in bringing something to the offering. And we some words and we shared some wisdom, and then we got to working in harvesting this corn. It was a wonderful experience. There were around 20 people picking both corn from the field. There was music. The drums that you hear in the background is from a pre-colonial drum called corn from Mexico. And we learned a lot in that session. The video might be struggling. I may have to stop it, but I basically wanted to show you that it is so much easier to pick a field with company, with help, with people that are there because they want to be there, because they are learning from it too. So I just wanted to show briefly that session was a harvest celebration. We laid down an offering, we ate together, and we also husked together. So that means we took, after harvesting the corn, we opened up each ear of corn and we talked about it together like a husking bee. And we said, well, this one looks true to type, or this one had earworm damage, or this one just looks like it got crossed with something else, so that we could do a better job at selecting our seed for seed saving and for seed sharing, and putting that our best and most precious seed for that, and being able to eat and share the rest. So I am going to stop this video because it's not quite playing correctly, but I just wanted to show you that, you know, it's not so hard if you have some help. Okay. All right. If you would like to know more about our project, Rooting Through Corn, you can find it at this webpage that is highlighted here. And here we have some of the comments that some of the participants shared with us after 1 year or 1 season of growing together and attending the training sessions and the ceremonies and just growing together. So a first-time backyard corn growing from Elkhart said, I learned more in this training session with you guys than years and years of reading and trials. And this is a lady that grew 2 varieties of corn, and she had questions, and she would reach out via messenger chat and ask me things. And if I didn't know the answer, I would reach out to John or to some other group participants, or I would just throw out the question in a group email and see what we could come up with to help her. The second quote is from my own experience growing buffalo corn. It's just as an image. The first year I grew it, we got 8 ears. The second year, we got 16 ears. This is the corn that comes from Nayarit in Mexico. So it's a very different climate, and that has a lot to do. Corn takes years to adapt to a climate. But this last season, I amended my soil. I got a soil test back, and my soil really needed some calcium. So I amended my soil, and I fertilized it with this organic compost, and I used the BT, and I increased my plot size by just a little bit. And from that, I got so many ears. And I got 11 pounds of seeds. That's after picking my seed saving seeds. And some other comments, from other people that participated. So now I'm going to turn it over to John so that he can share with us a little bit about gardening in general, if that can be applied to a sustainable project, to a sustainable life. John, I am going to mute myself, and I will click the slides as you talk along. Go ahead.
Thank you, Zuleyja. As you can tell, yeah, corn has brought Zuleyja and I together, and our families and households have learned a lot from each other in the last few years. It's an honor to be part of this presentation. Just to say that corn may not interest everyone who's attending as much as it interests us and our growers in the Rooting Through Corn project. But if not, we want to talk also a little bit about growing food in your backyard more generally as well. I've learned a lot too, just naming that, as Zuleyja has reminded me, corn can unite folks in North America, Central America, South America, and there's so much to share about that. So anyways, we're going to transition to gardening talk, and something that I've learned or pondered thanks to this series, I've thought more about, that often we garden alone, or there's a notion of I have to grow everything, I have to know everything. Yeah, and can network of others, of resources, actually keep gardening traditions alive and thriving for multiple years and prevent burnout or giving up. Can you click to the next slide, please? So some high points I'd like to point out, and some of these may be obvious, but they continue to be relevant, even for those of us who've now been gardening multiple seasons. Start small. No matter what decision you make about gardening, start even smaller. If you're brand new, it's amazing what one can glean and harvest from just a few square feet. It doesn't even have to mean you have soil that you can grow food in the flat earth. Growing on a patio or porch or a deck can work in containers. If you are going to grow in the soil and you're starting from scratch, you might consider a raised bed, something that improves drainage, maybe is a little easier on your back, it warms up faster in the spring, maybe a little easier to keep looking nice, and you'll be satisfied with. And also think about your waste. This webinar is encouraging us to think, what are the inputs that go into gardening? We'll talk about more in a few slides. If you could. So let's gather our thoughts. And if you are actively thinking about your own gardening endeavors, maybe these questions could help center yourself. What space do you have to work with? What are the pros and cons of your garden space? Are you in deep shade? Are you in full sun? Does your grow space is susceptible to wind damage? Second one, how much time are you realistically willing to commit? And it's really easy to overcommit, or to realize that many of us travel at different parts of the year, and that may actually coincide with a important window of gardening, where being gone for a week and not having a plan or not having a partner or a community could mean losing what you grew. So think about your schedule. Think about the skills that you're good at, what gives you life. And likewise, what parts of gardening or skills do you not want to touch? What tools do you need? Are there people you can think of partnering with, whether it's a neighbor or a friend or a family member? And what are the bigger ideas that keep you going in gardening? What are your values that you can identify? And do you have particular goals? And I'm suggesting gardeners, especially if you're new, just name a few. Maybe it's meals that you want to eat this year, or pounds of something, or maybe it's about aesthetics and a beautiful space. Next slide. So about scale, here is a table, and this is totally my thoughts. Others who have more experience may think otherwise. But if you're just getting started, or you're an urban gardener and want to focus on your deck or patio or porch, in the left column are some plants that can be grown fairly easily in potted containers. Now this could be a metal feed trough filled with potting mix. This could be not just a plastic pot. But for those who are just getting started, start with the easy stuff. Don't feel like in your first go that you need to try growing figs and strawberries, or potatoes on your deck. Some of these vegetables and herbs can be more challenging. And I put this up here to say, maybe stretch your skills if you've been doing this for a while, that you want to branch out some other crops. I won't go into detail, but we can ask maybe more questions in the question section about those if you'd like. So some visuals. For those who might be growing on a deck or on a patio, think about the materials you're going to use, and are you going to rot the deck by putting a ton of plants and pots that you're watering constantly? Does it need to be a raised space? And now I'm going to zoom in a little bit on particular things. Herbs are a great thing to start. A lot of herbs are known to spread quite easily if in open soil. Growing them in containers can bypass that. They can often live multiple years. If you're growing them in a pot, sometimes you can bury that pot a little bit in soil and mulch it over the winter, and it'll survive multiple years. That's saving waste. And I go to this cilantro example. Many of us love fresh herbs, but there's a lot of bags involved. And if you're getting bagged herbs week after week, I don't myself slow down to think about, how many bags I might go through. Next slide, please. Nasturtium. This may not be known by lots of people, but as this picture shows, nasturtiums are beautiful. They flow over walls and containers, and they're edible. So it's great for children to eat something beautiful. It's stretching for some of us to think we can eat a flower. Try it out. The greens are edible as well. Kind of spicy at the end. Lettuces, mustard green, cilantro. I emphasize these in some ways because they're fast to grow. So within a month, you can grow a lot of these things, and they're nutritious. Snipping them fresh from your back deck or your back garden, there's nothing so good as fresh herbs and greens. And a lot of them have plastic when you get them at the store. I think many of us think tomatoes might be the prized gem of gardening. Not everyone loves tomatoes, but I'm getting excited about the season just looking at my own pictures here of years past. Eggplant and okra as well can be really fun to grow and attractive to your space. Shamelessly, okra is my favorite plant to grow, and you don't see the standing plant here, but for tomatoes, just want to recognize there are space needs for tomatoes. Many tomatoes are going to produce for many weeks or months, and they're going to run out of fertilizer or need enough potting mixer material to keep producing. 1 cubic foot per plant might be wise. And you can trellis tomatoes vertically and get a lot of production out of a vertical space along a fence, a wall, or staked. And they can handle plenty of sun and deep but infrequent watering. That's a pro. Next slide. Kale. Not everyone's a fan of kale, but maybe this could be applied more generally. A lot of the brassicas or the mustard type greens from that family can produce for a long period of time and actually handle cold weather quite well, surviving the winter. They will need to be fertilized, and compost additions would be helpful. But they're a fun one. You can have kale for 12 months a year growing in your backyard or in your patio. Next slide. Not everyone's grown turmeric or even seen it in its more vegetative form, but turmeric is a superfood, and many of the, you might not know that regular mustard that you put on hot dogs and burgers, you know, the yellow comes from turmeric, but this tropical plant can grow really well, especially on a hot, sunny patio, and is anti-inflammatory and really good for you. It's beautiful and similar to ginger in how it looks to be grown. Next slide. Sweet potatoes. I put this in here, whether we're talking in containers or in the soil. Sweet potatoes will spread out and really would love more space than a patio would produce. But this potted plant shows how I've learned from others to grow sweet potatoes from a tuber bought at a store. And you pinch off the sprouts and put them in water and they will reroot. And you can create lots of sweet potato starts from one tuber. So I've once grown a 60-foot long row from one tuber I bought at a store in Goshen at the co-op. So it's a great addition. And potatoes can be grown in pots as shown here. That's maybe a new thought for some of us who've been gardening out in the soil. But they can be grown in pots and will require plenty of fertilizer and watering, but it's possible. Next slide. I put strawberries in here. A lot of the fruits that we buy in stores, it's pretty much impossible to buy them at a store without some sort of plastic or container. And the joy of growing fruit in your backyard without plastic can be really rewarding. I want us to ponder how many containers a household might go through from buying fresh fruit from the store. This lesser known root crop can be harvested in the winter, and it makes a beautiful flower during the growing season. It's very tall. So it may not be for everyone's backyard, and it does spread. So I recommend people keep it contained. But it was actually a food that kept many native tribes fed throughout the winter in the north. And it's a food grown in many parts of Canada and the US, but Jerusalem artichoke, or sunchokes, as it's sometimes called. Next slide. And if you want to stretch your protection of native communities, grow some milkweed. I could say more, but next slide. Next slide. Okay. So thinking about, oh, could you go back one more slide, Zuleyja? Thinking about plastic, again, here are a list of foods that I've realized when I buy them typically come in a container or plastic. Maybe that can be a new way to think about our gardening. Which crops could you grow that typically generate lots of waste? This is my list. It may be different than yours. And even thinking about some foods like carrots, you can go to a supermarket and buy, or the farmer's market and buy a bunch that does not have a bag and it still has the top on it versus bags. So we can save plastic by growing it ourselves. We can also shop differently and realize, oh, I can buy cabbage at a store and not get it in a bag and just put it in my cart. Next slide. So in short, I want to think about how we partner. I think it's a waste of energy sometimes when I think of my own gardening expectations of growing everything. I know folks in Goshen who've set up systems where one person's in charge of the squash, another person's in charge of the tomatoes, and it's kind of a leadership role system. try that out. Think of someone else that you're near to or have similar schedules or values that you could partner with. And growing food is just fun. It can be fun. Of course, it's a lot of work and it can be out in the elements that are hot and sweaty and insects at times. But this is from Bushelcraft, one of our workers who's in high school and a CSA member locally, having a great time together. It's not worth doing if it's not fun. So this is for everyone. And clicking through, I think this one's animated, Zuleyja. As we think about environmental sustainability, or sustainability in general, I think it's tempting, or it's common to feel overwhelmed by all the environmental challenges. But I think, as I've learned from Zuleyja in the Rooting Through Corn project as well, sustainability is more than just the environmental challenges. And I think we can we might benefit from considering the social and economic aspects of sustainability just as much, or maybe giving more emphasis to that than some of us tend to. And what are the costs of both growing food at home and for not doing so? So we wanted to bring in this image from the triple bottom line and start to entertain growing food more generally, whether it's corn or vegetables or herbs or fruit, and thinking about waste. How do we think more holistically about what we're doing, and learn maybe from this model, as Zuleyja has taken leadership with locally, that the social and the economic piece can be quite important. If it's not fun, if it doesn't have community building, if it doesn't really root us or save us money, or isn't practical in the community, is that sustainable? Next slide. And I think Zuleyja and I will go maybe back and forth as we think about this a little bit and flow into the question time, since I know we're running short on time. Here I'm outlining for gardening or growing food of any sorts. Environmentally, of course, we can think about the materials we're using. But maybe we can also be thinking of how many trips would we all make to Menards or to Lowe's to get bags of compost and have all this plastic, when we could order one shared load of compost from Goshen Environmental Center with one trip and not plastic. Zuleyja's example earlier of BT, if we all buy our own bottles and we don't get through that material that sits in a garage or a shed for years until it's not good and then we don't know where to throw it away, that's waste. That's an environmental aspect we can be thinking of. It has real repercussions. But also, what kind of companies are we supporting in our gardening, and what are their practices? Zuleyja, if you'd like to take it from here.
Sure, John. So in talking about the social aspects of sustainability, gardening, whether it's corn or just having a garden of multiple veggies and fruits in your space, can really have an effect on being sustainable. There's always the aspect of education, whatever we learn, to pass it on somehow. Reinforcing family structure, definitely, that's where it all starts. Community building through meaningful connections, working with each other. I remember one time I did have to take a trip to Mexico, and John was kind enough to go and care for my garden while I was gone. And I had the opportunity to do that for him while he and his family traveled sometime a year later, and I was able to do that. So that's part of being sustainable. You know, you don't have to be the person who knows it all and does it all.
Mm-hmm.
There's a network of people to support you. And this brings empowerment and a sense of responsibility. And it also sparks our creativity in terms of problem solving and finding solutions, you know, to be better stewards of the seeds that we have in our hands. It also, you know, helps promote our mind, body, soul, environment connection and also keep it a place for sacredness and for ceremony and for things that are valuable to our spirits. In talking quickly some of the economic aspects of sustainability, well, homegrown definitely means less waste, as John talked to us a little bit about. Less plastic, less containers, more affordable. Definitely, if you buy a packet of seeds, you can probably get pounds and pounds and pounds of food from it. So definitely more affordable. Less dependent on failing food systems. We have an actual food system where we have a lot of options of very cheap and nauseous food. And we rely on that, to feed ourselves and our families. And later we see the consequences, maybe health-wise, so definitely something to think about. Less use of non-renewable resources. We're not shipping our food from someplace else. We're finding it in our backyards. Creating food security, which is awesome, to be able to say, well, this summer or this fall, I ate from what I planted last summer. It's tailored to one's needs. Like John was saying, maybe you don't have to grow it all. Maybe you don't like okra. Maybe you would prefer a certain type of broccoli that is not often found in stores. Well, you have that, and you have that possibility when you do homegrown. And then more use of people power. We are a generation, or we are a society that's getting sick from sitting in front of desks and leaning our heads towards cell phones and tablets. So the more that you're out there using your body, moving around, the more health you're also going to get, and the more power that you're going to use in terms of your abilities, in terms of your gifts. So now, financial considerations is just a brief word for thought here for before we open for Q&A. How affordable does growing food at home need to be? Just how much in terms of money, how affordable could it be? Could we truly, can we truly afford to rely on cheap food, food covered in plastic, food shipped from far away? And what are the consequences of that? And is it worth it? Is it worth the person power? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the effort? I can clearly say that for me it is. Just very, very satisfying, the whole cycle of planting and eating what you plant. Really quickly before we turn to questions and answers, if you would like to grow corn with us with the Rooting Through Corn Planting Families project for this season, there's still a room for you. Here's a few of our contact numbers and information if you'd like to reach out. We would be happy to give you more information. This brings it to the end of our talk, but we are definitely happy to take some questions and try to answer them. So go ahead.
Thank you so much, John and Zuleyja. This is really, really fascinating just to listen to you talk through both the corn project and then also some of the wider philosophy on gardening and the capacity that backyard gardening has for waste reduction too. Let me ask a couple questions here, and then maybe Christy has some too, and let's just kind of see where this goes. So would one of you explain CSA for anybody who will hear this?
Sure, I'll take that one. It didn't say the farm that I co-founded. It's called Bushelcraft Farm. We offer a CSA program, which is community supported agriculture. And that's a movement that's nationwide or worldwide now, which folks in Japan and the Netherlands really gave a lot of visibility to, but it's a concept of supporting agriculture kind of as an investor and taking a risk and building a relationship with a farmer to upfront invest in that farm and receive kind of weekly installments, typically from that farm of whatever's in season that week. And so it's really kind of a food relationship. Ours at Bushelcraft, we've often had a summer and a fall season. And so it'd be a 14-week kind of period of receiving produce, and in exchange to people receive recipes and ideas and pick up from the farm typically, or learn together, have potlucks, etc. I could say more, but it's a way of sharing and taking risks together and really getting into a deeper relationship about local food.
And it's maybe a way to participate in a farm or kind of garden culture, even if you don't have the time, space, whatever, to do it in your own life.
Yeah, and I would add too, I work with a number of teenagers and youth, and the CSA model for farmers, small scale farmers, is a great way for starting something. Frankly, having the money to even buy seeds when you don't have much money or you don't own land. So it's a very translatable model for small scale growers, and economically is great for community, I would say.
So that's a nice bridge to another question. Tell us a little bit about the teen interns. There was some reference to that at some point in the presentation too, and you kind of referenced it just now too.
Would you like me to answer that one too, Zuleyja? Yeah, Bushelcraft, we've started an internship program, but I will say in the corn project as well, there's a lot of age diversity in some families, as Zuleyja has mentioned, with children. I wouldn't say they're interning with the corn project per se, but I think in both of our work that's synergistic, we're developing opportunities for young people. And in a lot of ways, these are entry points for young folks to say, oh, I didn't know growing food could be that, life-giving and enjoyable. At Bushelcraft, we have a program going on from now until the end of May for 6 high schoolers, some Goshen, some Elkhart students at this point. And we want them to get exposed to the whole range of what growing food is about, and realize it takes, you don't have to want to be a farmer to learn from outdoor careers. Thinking of Aaron as well, and there's lots of outdoor careers that aren't necessarily growing food, but can be also learned on a farm or elsewhere. So we aren't open to more right now, but in the future that could be a possibility, and hope to see more youth get involved with outdoor careers.
So we do have a question in the chat, and it's, do you think beginners would benefit from using pre-grown plants and transplanting, or starting with seeds?
I am just going to answer that very, very briefly because I'm no expert. For corn, it's not customary to pre-grown it and then transplant it. You sow that directly into the ground once the time of or the risk of frost is gone, which is usually by like after the middle of May or so. And for many other seeds, you can definitely start with small plantings, pre-grown, but do be mindful of where you get those and how you get those and how many containers you end up having in your garage afterwards.
Let's see, I think there was also a question about some of this is a question, I guess, maybe a little bit more to me. What kinds of seeds are we giving away at the Reese Center? So let me just quickly run through what I can remember in my head that we've got. We've got a variety of herbs, especially basil, some cilantro. I think there's some sage available. We've got tomatoes, some climbing beans, some bush beans, I believe some root vegetables. Zuleyja, were you going to make some corn available possibly too? Putting you on the spot here, sorry. Maybe that's something.
No problem, Erin. We did talk about this. So yes, we have seed to share, definitely. We do ask that you reach out to us via email or through our Facebook page, because growing corn does take up some space, and you need to grow a minimal amount of seeds so that you're not inbreeding and damaging your corn seed for later seasons. So definitely, if you're interested, we have seed for you available, and we will take you every step of the way so that you have a successful season. So that would be if you want to join the project this season.
And Erin, could you share again the dates and times that the seeds would be available at Wreath?
Yeah, okay. Also, we'll have some greens available, a seed for growing greens, either as sprouts or for longer term kind of growing. So our seeds will be available at the Wreath Center beginning next Monday, the 28th of February, for the following week, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. At the Wreath Interpretive Center, 410 West Plymouth Avenue. John, yeah.
I was going to say, I realized one of those questions is from one of our current interns, Giomar, and I thought I would go back to that one a little bit. Zuleyja had answered about transplants and starting seeds. Just want to say to everyone, there's lots of great information out there to reference. Each crop is different. Corn, as Zuleyja mentioned, not great for transplanting, but yeah, tomatoes, you can grow them from seed directly into the ground. It would be typical to transplant them because you get more of a jump on the season in our northern climate versus starting from seed sometime. But we'd happily answer more of those detailed questions if you have them. But Google's pretty amazing to help sort through some of those. Thanks, Giomar.
All right, well, we are past 7:30 for the night. I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us. I will put a link in the chat one more time. If you want to pull that up, it'll take you to the page with the registrations for upcoming webinars. And as Erin said at the beginning, our next webinar is next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. We have Sandra Ann Harris, who is the author of Say Goodbye to Plastic. So building on a little bit of what we talked about tonight, next week as well. And lastly, Zuleyja and John, thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise. And we hope everyone has a great night. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great series.